All right. Well, good evening, everybody. It's a much smaller crowd tonight than what we saw last week, but an engaged crowd nonetheless. And we're happy to have you tonight as we work through some of our reopening plans and sharing some information with you. I'm going to share my screen here in a moment. And I'm going to go back to the beginning. Ooh, wrong one. There it is. All right, so we've got a town hall type meeting tonight, and some things to know before we get started is that a lot of you have questions, and that's awesome, and we're happy to answer them. We'll answer them if we have answers. We will let you know if we don't, and we will certainly use your questions to inform our decision making and our process here in the coming days. But if you do have a question, I'd ask that you use the chat function. And we've set the chat up so that it will go directly to our moderator, who will aggregate any questions and try to, weed out repeat or similar questions and share them with me, and I will answer them with you. So during the course of the presentation tonight, I'd encourage you to ask away. We will answer as many questions as we can, and again, if we don't have answers, we'll let you know. Need you to be aware, though, that this session is being recorded, and it will be posted to our website probably tomorrow after we have a chance to upload it and get it all set. So if you miss any part of this, if you have to leave the call for any reason and you want to follow up on whatever you missed, you'll be able to click the link. You'll also be able to click the link to Thursday night's meeting, which is on our website right now. We are going to use some of the questions that you're asking and that were asked last week to create a frequently asked questions document, and that will also get posted to the website. Any follow-up questions that you might have should be sent to the email address that we have created for this reopening process, and it is returntoSchool2020@leepublicschools.net. And I'm pleased that a number of you have accessed that email address and are sending your questions. And we make every effort to get back to you as quickly as possible. And we appreciate your patience as we navigate multiple mediums to try to get answers to questions. So reopening. Let me see. I need to change this. The reopening, or what we know, excuse me. What we know is that there are more questions than there are answers. What we know is that we need to all be prepared to be fluid in our approach to teaching and learning and parenting and educating. The models of return were submitted to DESE, not today, but indeed last Thursday. And a final version will be submitted next Monday, 1 week from today. We need to submit our final plans to DESE for their consideration. Our reopening options really take on four possibilities for everybody. There's an in-person model, which is what we have grown to know and love school to be over the course of many, many, many years. There's a remote option, and that is where teachers would be teaching web-based from their classrooms, and students would be receiving that education back at home. And then there's a hybrid model, which is a combination of the two of those, where some of the students' time would be spent in front of a classroom teacher, and some of a student's time would be spent receiving remote instruction. And then there is a fourth option that is in the event that anybody doesn't want to take advantage of those whatever model is selected, and that's a third-party virtual model. So this would be a completely online model, not taught by Lee Public School teachers, but monitored by Lee Public Schools staff. But it will be a third party. The state has not shared with us yet who the vendor or vendors that will be available for that are. I expect that we'll get that information sometime in the next 24 hours. So we'll be able to share that with you as we get that information. The professional development and for staff, understanding that we are entering a different phase of teaching has been is influencing the school calendar, and this is going to be a discussion for the school committee this week about what the school calendar will look like. What we do know is that traditionally students are obligated to attend schools for 180 days a year. The department has scaled that number back to 170 days, and they've also scaled back the hours relative to time on learning to reflect the 10 fewer days. So we do need an updated school calendar, and that will be for discussion with the school committee. But one of the contingencies here is that school must not begin later than September 16th. And the school calendar that I've created for the school committee's consideration has us returning to school in whatever model on September 16th. Personal protective equipment in the time of COVID-19 is very important. We have ordered more than $40,000 worth of masks and shields and gloves and other cleaning supplies that are designed to protect not just our staff, but our students as well. And we're considering using some monies that have been made available to us to hire some additional custodial staff to assist with sanitizing buildings if we are back in buildings in any form of in-person teaching. If we are in a remote environment, there won't be a need for the additional custodial staff. We'll be able to manage just fine with the staff who are currently employed, and their responsibilities will be to clean and sanitize areas where teachers will be teaching. Details and schedules are being evaluated, and so around that, we're examining the hows and the whens of cleaning and sanitizing, and protocols for using the bathroom, how students will move through hallways, when they will see the nurse, how they will do that, if they have to visit a school counselor, and more. Lots of those details are going to be driven by the model that we adopt, and the schedules that students will be following for their classes are also going to be contingent upon the model that we adopt to a certain degree. So principals Briganti and Retzel are working on those things and trying to put some things in place and get that information codified as quickly as possible. But the reality is we're going to need the balance of the summer to get us ready. So we appreciate your patience while we work through this so that the opening can be as smooth as possible. Technology is ordered. Chromebooks have been ordered and tablets have been ordered for students in our youngest grades. The Chromebooks will be available for any and all students who need one. So access to technology should not be a roadblock to delivery of content and instruction. We did upgrade the bandwidth at both schools to allow for synchronous teaching and learning whenever possible. Synchronous teaching and learning is real-time teaching and learning versus asynchronous, which represents more often recorded content that students would access at off hours. If we are in a plan that does not involve students being in person in school, we are devising ways to make the internet available to families who may not have consistent or reliable internet at home, but that is going to be driven by, again, the model that the school committee chooses to adopt this week. Transportation, we are coordinating efforts with DUFOR on schedules and capacities, and I've been in contact with them on a regular basis, including just moments before this meeting kicked off. We do anticipate that multiple runs will be necessary, but that's going to give us some flexibility on our time on learning and the hour requirements that are laid out by DESE. On the chart on the next page is just going to give you some idea of some of the challenges that we face as a school district in planning for bus transportation. You can see if you had call it a 77 passenger bus under normal circumstances, we'd be able to put that number of students on there. In the maximum occupancy today, that would be 25 students. So we're looking at about a third of the students on that particular bus. So we're going to have some significant limitations. We are going to be surveying families to determine how they plan to get their children to and from school. That's going to be a little more detailed than the survey that I sent out a few weeks back, so that we can make sure that we are planning routes appropriately. Of course, anybody who needs or wants to take advantage of our transportation, we will make sure that we're able to accommodate that. What does it look like in school regarding practices and protocols? We're establishing one-way traffic in hallways and stairwells. We're accessing seating at 6-foot distances, and I've got some layouts that demonstrate what that looks like, because we'll be at a fraction of the capacity at any given time. If we are in school, at least at the beginning, we'll be able to manage that just fine. We're looking at staggered arrivals and dismissal. And the key there is that early bus runs may need to be a little bit earlier than normal. Dismissal time will not run later than normal. We'd have to adjust at our end to meet those requirements, so that we're not inconveniencing the receipt of students at the end of the day when they get home. Classroom seating and the desk arrangements is going to look a lot like 1950s education, and we've worked really, really hard over a lot of years to embrace a collaborative learning environment, to one where students are talking with each other and working closely and problem solving with one another. Unfortunately, we're going to have to revert back to the stand and deliver model of education, where the teacher is at the front of the room, socially distanced from the students. Students are spaced apart, a minimum of 6 feet, in all forward facing. We have technology on our side so that we can still access some creative ways to deliver education, but it's going to look different than what it has in the past. We do know that masks will be required for all students in grades 2 through 12, and highly suggested for our kindergarten and first grade students. We are looking at ways to develop some policy that could help to support families, students, and staff in the enforcement of this mask wearing. We know it can get uncomfortable, it can get tiring, it can get hot. So we will identify breaks for students to be able to remove their masks, to be able to get a breather, be free from that restriction for a period of time, and then return to education in a targeted way. Hygiene is critically important in the world of COVID-19, and so we will have an emphasis on mask wearing, hand washing, and those commonly accepted practices like coughing and sneezing into an elbow, et cetera. And we're going to have lots of signage around our buildings to remind students and staff that this is a really important practice. The best thing that you can do to keep yourself safe is to help keep everyone else safe as well. So wear your mask, wash your hands, cover your cough is going to be really, really important for all of us. Before and after school programming is still up in the air. At this point, there isn't plans for either of those things to happen. At this point, I have to be honest that I don't have a true expectation that there'll be any high school athletics in the fall. We are examining ways that we may be able to engage LYA in some programming, and we've got a great long-term partnership with them that we want to keep intact. We know that a lot of families rely on that to allow families to work, parents to work, guardians to work, and students to stay engaged. But we're going to have to figure out some details about where that would happen and how. Meals and food service, we still have a responsibility to feed. And so we are working on what the best way to provide breakfast and lunch is in each of the models, whether that's in person, hybrid, or remote. Most options will look like grab and go. But I've in conversations with our food service director, she's exploring some creative ways to offer meals that aren't going to be the same old run of the mill on a daily basis. Physically spaced seating will happen at lunch as well. And I know if there were students, or if there are students on this call right now, there's probably an exhale or a grunt from them that they're frustrated by that, because that's typically a time for them to socialize. And while it's not that they won't be able to socialize, they're just going to need to do so at a physically spaced distance. I'm sure many of you right now look like that, with your head in your hands and wondering, my goodness, when is this going to end? How are we going to do this? I need to get my child back in school, or I need a break. I need some relief. What are we going to do? And I can promise you that you're not alone, that all of us as parents and educators are feeling some of those stresses. And we know the challenges that you face in trying to manage routines and expectations, and maintain encouragement, and make sure that students are feeling supported on a daily basis. And we are here for you. And so we don't want you to forget that we've got a lot of resources in place and supports that we'll be able to offer as we get back to teaching and learning. Our next steps as a school community is that families will be surveyed in the coming days. Staff will also be surveyed. And again, some of that is about finding out whether you plan to self-transport children. Do you have any medical needs that may prevent your child from being able to return to school in an in-person environment? Some other drill down type questions. I appreciate the response rate that we got from the first survey. It was really outstanding, and it truly demonstrated what an amazing community we have. And I'm going to be looking for a similar response rate at this upcoming with this upcoming survey. We've got to update our school calendar this week, finalize plans with school committee support, and then really we want to get back to what we do best, and that's teach. We want to be able to work with students. We want to be able to educate students. We want to be able to help them become better problem solvers, to develop coping mechanisms, to address deficiencies that they may have, and to overall just allow them to be successful young men and women when they complete their education with the Lee Public Schools. So at this point, I'm sure there are a lot of you who have your digital hand up and are wanting to have some questions answered. I will ask our moderator, to Principal Briganti, to let me know what's in the chat, and if there are some questions, we'll try to get them answered, and know that we're here for you, and we will stay on the call as long as you've got questions and we have answers, or in which case, please remember, some of those answers maybe we don't know right now, but we will find out, or we will get answers to you. So, Principal Briganti.
We do have a few questions in the queue here, and just a reminder to everybody to use the chat function to send your questions in, and the chat button is located at the bottom of your screen. First one, what is the natural consequence for violation of your mask policy?
So we haven't decided that. That's what's going to be in front of that's certainly something that's going to be in front of school committee right now. That question has been asked of the state. What do you advise? And their answer has been a little bit, I don't know, veiled is perhaps the best word. And the real answer here is about educating students and families about the importance of wearing a mask, that you're not doing that just for your own benefit, but for the benefit of your classmates, of your teachers, of your colleagues, when we refer to the adults as well. And it's about modeling, and there will be an expectation that we as adults and educators will be modeling that as well. I can't speak to a specific answer to tell you that the first time the student will be sent home, or whatever that case might be. Those are important questions, but ones that we don't have specific answers to at this time.
There's a series, excuse me, there's a series of questions about childcare. Childcare is a huge issue. I cannot work full-time if my child cannot be in school full-time. Are you aware of any additional childcare facilities that will be opening? And how will my child engage in remote learning if he or she is in a childcare facility?
That's an excellent question, and I do not know of additional childcare facilities that may be opening as school reopens. Um, I'm looking to Principal Retzel to see if she has. I'm not suggesting she has the answer, but just to see if she's heard anything that maybe she could share with this group tonight.
I have also not heard of any new daycare openings.
So students of school age, the plan that's in front of that I plan to present to the school committee tomorrow would have students in grades K 1 and 2 in person 5 days a week, and students in grades 3 through 12 on a hybrid model. There are also students with identified special needs and English learners who would be in school every day. And that is based on guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to address the needs of our most sort of fragile learners and to be able to move forward. So I'm not sure from the person who submitted the question what age their child is. If they would like to sort of have this discussion a little bit more personally, if you send me an email to returntoschool2020@leepublicschools.net, we'd be happy to pick up the phone and give you a call.
What will happen if a child has cold symptoms? Will they need to stay home for 14 days?
So I don't know that 14 days is going to be necessary, but the guidance and advice that we're going to offer to families and staff is that if you don't feel well, please don't come in. And we know that a lot of students and staff alike are troopers. They want to be in school. They love learning. They love teaching, and they feel like they're neglecting their rights and responsibilities and everything else if they don't come in. In this instance, if you're not well, we want you to stay home, and hopefully you just have a common cold and that you aren't going to be symptomatic with COVID-19 and that you're not going to be a carrier. But we want to take some preventative measures. So if you're not well, the advice will be stay home. You will be provided with work. We're going to keep you up to speed. We're gonna be creative in how we do that. But first and foremost, it's important for us to keep our community healthy. So the direction there would be stay home. When in doubt, stay home.
Will desks have plastic shields?
We are exploring the acquisition of some shields. We have not made the commitment to put a shield on every desk, but our facilities director has been working with vendors to explore viable options for us to acquire to put up for student desks. So we haven't made any final determinations on that yet, but we are exploring that.
A couple questions about remote learning and virtual learning. The first one, what about parents that do not feel comfortable sending their kids to in-person classes? How will we choose remote learning?
So if the plan that is adopted by the school committee has any in-person component to it, so if they select hybrid or in-person instruction, and I will tell you that for right now, let's be very honest, 100% in-person instruction is not on the table. So there's a hybrid model or there's remote learning. If the hybrid model is adopted by school committee and you choose to not engage in a hybrid model, then you would let us know that you're adopting the virtual learning program that will be administered again by a third party. And what that means is there will be a company that will have Massachusetts curriculum centered instruction that your child will be able to access. We will have our staff checking in with your student to make sure that they are getting work completed, that they are staying on task, and that they are staying focused in their efforts. So you're not going to lose all of your connection to the Lee Public Schools. You're going to have a trusted adult on our end, making sure that your child is staying engaged. It's simply that the instruction will not come from a Lee Public School educator.
If enough families choose a remote-only option, will the rest of the students who need to be in school be able to be there full-time?
That's a great question, and I'm not. I don't have an answer for you at this point. I think that there are some significant variables that we would need to consider about families who may opt for virtual learning, and if everything went back in person, what are the limitations there in terms of people coming and going? We would have to have literally half of the students probably at each grade level across all grades opt to do that in order for us to be able to pull that off. I'm not sure that that's something that we can plan for. I think that my encouragement here is for families to know that when we return to school, in whichever model we opt for, that the Lee Public Schools are the ones who are in the best position to deliver the highest quality education regardless of model. So we will deliver a great in-person education. We will deliver the highest quality of remote education, and we will make sure that we are attending to the social emotional needs of your children as well as part of that education. I am not in a position to comment on the third-party vendor at this point because that vendor is not known to me. However, I would like to suggest that that our education is top-notch and will be. So I would discourage people from sort of jumping to that venue, but I also want people to do what's right for them. You need to do what's best for you and your child. And you don't have to make that decision in a vacuum. You should feel encouraged to reach out to either principal. You can feel encouraged to reach out to me. You can feel encouraged to reach out to school counselors to discuss the benefits and challenges of all of the models and to see how they may, which one may best meet the needs of your child.
Will students remain in one classroom all day?
So that's going to vary depending on grade level. At the elementary school, the expectation is that the students would remain in one classroom. It's a little more challenging for us to make that happen at the middle and high school. But those are, again, scheduling challenges that are being deliberated by the administration staff. We know that less movement is better in this instance, and so we will try to mitigate how much movement is taking place. But we also know that movement is an important part of people's days and their wellness. So we're going to have to build in some time for them to get up and move, but it may not necessarily be from one class to the next.
Will kids have access to their lockers, or will they have to carry everything all day?
We do expect that we will be able to assign lockers if we are in what would look like a hybrid environment, that we would be able to strategically schedule locker assignments so as to ensure that students who are in the building at any given time, that there are socially distanced between lockers in case they needed to go to their locker, but they will have access to them. And those lockers, the exterior of those lockers would certainly get sanitized on a regular basis.
If you have students in the same family and you're in a hybrid model, will all of those students go to school on the same day?
Yes.
What will mask breaks look like and how many will there be during the day?
So again, those are parts of a plan that haven't been finalized. We do know that we're going to need to have regular mask breaks. How long it lasts and what takes place while mask break is happening are details that we're still trying to figure out. But we do want to make every effort to make sure that students feel safe, feel comfortable, and engaged during the school day if they're in a school building. So it's going to require, it's probably going to be a little bit of trial. Trial, I don't know if I want to say error, but trial and retrial as we test out different models to see what is going to work best. And that's going to be part of our professional development with staff when they return to school over those first 10 days to talk to them about how do we properly administer mask breaks and what do we do during that time to keep everybody safe.
If we choose hybrid, how soon will we know which cohort our student will be in?
That's an excellent question. I would suggest, well, let me tell you that the initial plans for dividing students has been on basically on an alphabetical model. Students basically A through K and L through Z are the two cohorts that are being explored. So you would either be in sort of cohort A or cohort B, depending on where you are in the alphabet, and then which model of hybrid is adopted by the school committee will drive what the presence of your child's in-person education looks like. So the models for consideration include something that looks like an odd and even day model, which would be based on the calendar date. So today being August 3rd, it being an odd day. If you were in a cohort that attended school on odd days, you'd be in school today on Monday, August 3rd. You'd be home tomorrow on Tuesday, August 4th. Other models include an AA remote BB model. So students in cohort A come to school on Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday's a remote day for everybody. Thursday, Friday, if you're in cohort B, then you're in school. And again, there are benefits and challenges to any of these. There's another model that looks like AB, remote AB, so that everybody would go to school twice in a week, but you would only go to school. It wouldn't be, your 2 days would not be back to back. So there are different models for consideration. And again, some benefits and challenges to each of them that I expect will be vetted fully at tomorrow night's school committee meeting.
Will students on 504 plans get an extra day in person?
Probably not on a 504, but students with identified special needs that have an IEP, there is guidance from the state that looks like making sure that we are accommodating some of our most fragile learners to give them as much access to in-person instruction as possible. Mrs. Norton, our special education director, isn't able to be on the call tonight, but I know that she would be happy to field any questions that you have around that. So you should feel encouraged to send her an email if you do have a specific question about your child and access to accommodations.
Will there be a clear divider between the teacher and the students?
Again, going back to the question about plexiglass, there may be plexiglass placed on teacher desks, but that would probably be the extent of the clear divider. that it would exist. Adults in the building would be wearing masks, as would students. There would be a very clear divide in terms of a minimum of a 6-foot distance between the student desks and the teaching area to allow for that to happen.
Will there be temperature checks upon arrival to school?
No. The expectation will be that staff and students alike and their families will take the necessary precautions before leaving to go to school. There's some discussion around putting together a checklist for families that they can do on a daily basis prior to sending a student to school, and a checklist for staff to do prior to coming to work. Those things are in the works, but they're not definitive. What I would tell you is, going back to conversation about if you don't feel well, stay home. That's the best and safest approach. But if you have the ability to check your temperature at home and you have a thermometer, I would encourage you to use it on a daily basis just to be extra safe.
What will the notification rules be for if a staff member or a student in the building comes down with COVID?
Yeah, excellent question. So, what I can tell you is this, is that conversations with the local Board of Health have surrounded this exact this question. And the conversation looks like this: for each incident that may happen of a student being ill, potentially being sent home, showing as symptomatic, whatever it might be, the school department will work in conjunction with the Board of Health to take the necessary precautions to explore what the symptoms are, for the child or the adult to seek out their pediatrician or primary care physician, as the case may be, to get tested if that is so determined, and then for us to, if we have to engage in contact tracing, for us to do that. But it won't be done in a silo, and it will be done in conjunction with the Board of Health. And I'm very appreciative of the time and efforts that the Board of Health has put in to help guide us in our formulation of plans to make sure that we're keeping people safe each day. As far as notification goes, we know that people are entitled to privacy, especially around medical implications. And so what you should know is that if there was a need for us to announce to the school community that there was a need for us to change our practice, so we're going to close the building or the buildings or whatever it may be, that would be done in a way that would make sure that you were aware of what you needed to know so that you could respond accordingly, but may not necessarily identify the student or staff in question. My experience with contact tracing is that if the Board of Health engages in that process, and if you are contacted by them to determine, then there becomes a point where you're informed about where it may have happened and with whom. But that is not something that we're necessarily at liberty to share. The state has issued start and stop guidance. We are, we're using that to help to inform our decision making. We're also examining levels of COVID-19 contraction, and we're at a low point right now. We're holding pretty steady below what the threshold for school closure would be. We're hopeful that we can keep in that range as we move through the end of the summer here and into the fall. I should point out also that this may be a good time to talk about the power of social media and what happens around that. If you do find yourself in a situation where you're contacted by the school that perhaps you from jumping to Facebook Twitter or any other social media platform of your choice to announce that. For all that has the potential to do is get rumor mills unnecessarily stirring. So we want to be careful and cognizant about the things that we say, when we say them, to whom we say them, and how we say them. So, let's check on your child and make sure that they get evaluated by a professional before we leap to any conclusions. And even then, let us do our work with the Board of Health if we had to take any additional steps around school closure and whatnot.
For children who are receiving services such as speech services, will those services always be in person, or could some of them be online?
There's certainly opportunity for the delivery of some remote services, but we are hopeful to try to arrange for as many of those to be in person as possible. I understand that the challenge there could be at either end, could be at our end to be able to schedule it. It could be at a family's end to potentially be uncomfortable with that arrangement. But we're going to shoot for personal delivery of services as much as possible.
If the school
again, if I could encourage whomever shared that question, if you need some clarification on your particular child's delivery of services, I would encourage you to email Mrs. Norton so that you can get some personalized feedback on that question.
If the school committee votes to begin the year with remote learning, will the third-party vendor deliver instruction, or will Lee teachers?
Now, Lee teachers, if remote learning is selected by the Lee School Committee, then remote learning will be delivered by Lee Public School staff.
Could you confirm from your presentation that you said that under a hybrid model, kindergarten, first and second grade would be in school 5 days a week?
Yes. And I should couch that to the audience to say that is my suggested plan to the school committee. That is all that is a recommendation that would be made to the school committee. The school committee would need to approve that plan for that to be definitive.
If there's full remote learning this year, what will the grading be like?
All grading and instruction is going to revert back to what you had been used to prior to our school closure back in the middle of March of this year. So we're going to return to a traditional grading and attendance system. The instruction will be rigorous, will be engaging, will be challenging. We're going to push students and staff in their abilities to deliver education and receive education and to demonstrate mastery. But it's going to look different. So remote instruction or hybrid instruction and in-person instruction is not going to look anything like what the spring semester was. The expectations there, we were frankly in a bit of survival mode to try to get through the unknown. Now we've shifted gears, and our primary function is to deliver the rigorous education that you're accustomed to receiving in the Lee Public Schools.
Will students have band, art, PE, and other specials?
Yes, they may look a little bit different, and the activities that may happen are going to look a little bit different. But we do expect that we'll be able to offer those specials to students. We know that the arts, for instance, are an important part of a child's development, and access to them is very, very important. Physical education may have more of a health slant than a physical activity slant, as we try to make sure that we can safely navigate social distancing. But the expectation is that we'll be able to have those specials in place for the coming school year.
There are several questions around the theme of what is the school going to be doing to help students with the stress impact and social and emotional needs, especially if we're in full remote learning.
Right. So, and we've got a student support team, if you would, that was put together as part of our return to school task force, and they've been tackling this question for weeks now, trying to figure out what can we do. And what you need to know is that we know the importance of supporting a student's social emotional wellness, and we know that this is a traumatic experience to varying levels with our students. So we need to recognize that, we need to support that, and we need to embrace that in such a way that the students know it's safe to express frustrations, concerns, and questions and anxiety. But we also need to help students to identify ways that they can cope and be successful in this environment. So school counselors and school staff generally have expressed for the most part, have expressed a willingness to reach out to children, to check in with them, to make sure that we have a regular means of communication with them that involves something other than academic support alone, so that they can feel the support of our school community, because it's truly what it is, a community effort to keep our students well.
Will Mrs. Lucy at the elementary school and other supported staff members be available for Zoom meetings this school year?
Yes.
Is the school committee ultimately making the decision about the start of school plan?
Yes.
Will there be high school sports this year?
Probably not. But I should maybe temper that with, I'd like to take it one season at a time. I find it very unlikely that we'll be able to have a fall athletic season. And I'll stop there, because I'd love to dream big and think that things are going to get a lot better for us quickly. But that may just be dreaming big. So let's take it one season at a time. Right now, I'd suggest that probably there will not be fall athletics.
Should we be planning on buying school supplies this year that are different than normal, such as wipes, sanitizer, extra masks?
Oh, that's a really outstanding question. I guess I might just hang tight on the answer to that question until we decide what model we're going to begin school with. Hate to people, not that all of those things don't have some utility potentially in your home anyhow, but I would hate to see you rush out and buy these things in anticipation of one model if it's not the model adopted. So I think I would ask you to exercise some good judgment on your part. If you're in a position where you can acquire those things now, maybe you go ahead and do that. I don't know that we all want to rush out and buy a package of Clorox wipes to put in our child's backpack each day right now, but at some point you may wish to do that. I want to stop a little bit short of telling you what school supplies you can or should acquire. I think you're going to make the best decision for you and for your family and your child.
It sounds like the hybrid model will be difficult for kids with organizational difficulties. What can we do to help them?
I think that I can't disagree that any plan that we put in place that doesn't look like 5 days or so of consistent instructional delivery is going to be challenging. I think that it's about beginning that process of consideration now to think about that. Again, we'll have some more direction in the coming days after the school committee has a chance to make some decisions around this. But I'd say that if you can begin to have the conversation and think about what kinds of structures you may be able to put in place in your own home to assist with that. So the presence of calendars, of reminders, using technology if you have it to your advantage to help students stay focused, developing routines that can carry over once school starts, are all great opportunities for you as families to support your child or your children. I know from experience that there's middle schoolers, high schoolers, probably even some kids who are younger than that, that their systems are so far out of the ordinary right now in terms of what time they go to bed and what time they wake up because of the change in dynamic that COVID has brought about. That the more quickly we can get them back on routine, the better. And to that point, I think it's going to be really important to note that regardless of model, hybrid, in-person, or remote, that the school day will look like a school day. Will look like an 8 to 2:30, 8 to 2 o'clock, schedule, 8:30 to 3. It's going to be the expectation is going to be that students will be engaged in learning at scheduled times, either directly in front of a teacher or with the assistance of technology, but that the idea of completing schoolwork at 10 o'clock is going to not, or maybe I shouldn't say 10, maybe 8 p.m. isn't out of the ordinary or extraordinary, but the expectation is that would be the equivalent of maybe completing something that looks like homework, not in schoolwork.
A couple people had similar questions about a rumor they've heard about teachers' children being allowed to attend school every day. They just wanted some clarification whether that was true or not.
So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has been having conversations with district leaders about the possibility that districts would recognize that in order for teachers to be able to return to work, that there may be a need to have their children in school 5 days a week. So the conversations, and nothing has been finalized, but the conversations have looked something like, let's just say Mike Richard lives in Lee but teaches in Pittsfield, that my child or children would be able to attend school in Lee every day if Lee was in school, even if they were hybrid, that they would be able to go to school every day to allow me to go to work in Pittsfield every day. So it would be the home district, not the teaching district if it were different, or the employing district if it were different. So those are some conversations that have been had at the state level. There has been no agreement to that yet, but those are conversations. So that rumor is, can be validated to a degree that there are conversations around that, but that nothing specific has been decided.
I believe I hit all of the questions in the list. It's possible I may have missed one. So if that is the case, please send it again. Also, if you have any other questions that weren't answered, please send those and we'll give people a minute or so to type in any last questions.
Thanks. And while people are maybe taking a moment to do that, I might ask either Principal Briganti and or Principal Retzel, if there's anything that you want to add to the conversation from your perspectives relative to your individual schools. I think this would be a great opportunity. There's no pressure, but just in case you did want to share anything.
I would just share, I did have a meeting with a small number of students last night via Zoom for kind of a similar to this question and answer after a brief presentation. And there's a lot of thought out there with students right now, at least at the high school level, that any sort of return to school this year is gonna look similar to normal. And I think we just all need to have conversations with our students about that not really being the case, that it's going to be a different year this year, regardless of which model we end up in. So I do think that's just something that's worth mentioning. And I will plan on having a couple more of those available sessions for students as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it is really important to piggyback on that, that teaching and learning is going to look very different this year than it ever has. And we're hopeful that it's a short-term change in our practice. But we need to do everything that we can to support our students with the resources that we have. And so I think the important part here is if there are questions, much like the one, anything that you hear that might be rumor milled, send it our way so that you can get the true answer, which again could look like we don't know right now, but that answer from my seat is probably better than someone else assuming that something that's not decided has already been. So keep the questions coming and encourage your children, if they have questions, to ask, whether through you or directly to teachers, to counselors, or to principals. Sorry, Principal Retzel.
I just wanted to add a couple of thoughts. One is concerning the incoming kindergarten kiddos. Since we have the 10 days of professional development, we're going to work together to have the kids come in for a screening and perhaps a little orientation at the same time, so that they'll have a little bit better idea of what they're going to be coming into, and so will their parents. So more information will come on that. And the other thing that we have been talking about for quite some time now is working out, when we do return, to have students be able to visit their prior teachers, so that they can have some closure and sort of wrap up of the year. So we're just working on those two things that didn't really come out in any of the questions.
Thank you.
We did just get a couple questions about will there be opportunities to switch modes? For example, if a family chose virtual, could they switch back to hybrid at some point during the year?
Yeah, so we are, part of the recommendation will be about trying to limit the number of times that can happen. Although I will tell you that it sounds like potentially from this state's perspective, we may not be able to do that. We're just trying to do it so that we can keep a handle on scheduling and attendance issues that can come about, and also to make sure that there is a smooth transition between programs and platforms in terms of the delivery of curriculum. So the door is not closed once you make a choice, but we're going to have to await some further clarification around whether there are any limitations on the frequency or the timing of changing platforms.
A similar question, once the school committee adopts a model for the year, is that for the year or could it possibly change?
Right, so the hope is that it won't be for the year unless that was full in person, and we know that that's not going to be the choice of the committee. But no, the idea is that we will continue to monitor the status of our community, the transmission rates in the area, and if there are opportunities to get more closer to in-person, then we will make those adjustments. If we have to move further away from in-person because of any spike in transmission or whatever the case might be, we're going to need to do that as well. The idea here is we should be able to make the switch very quickly from a hybrid or in-person model to remote learning. That can happen overnight, literally. If we were transitioning from remote to a hybrid or remote to in-person, we would plan that over some time to make sure that all the necessities were taken care of. But we need to be prepared to make a switch at the flip of a switch, based on what's happening in the community.
There's a question about transmission rates. Is there a particular transmission rate you are looking for?
Yeah, 0. But I think that the state seems to be, well, one that I'm looking for, I guess I've got my own thoughts about it, but what I'd be looking at is a conversation with the Board of Health and looking for their guidance and recommendation around that. So I know that's a non-answer, and I apologize to the person that submitted the question, but I think that I'm not a medical professional. And so while I mean it, 100%, that I'm seeking 0% transmission, I really want the number to be as close to 0 as possible. I just don't know what the metric is that would trigger the ability, the true comfort level to have in-person instruction versus remote instruction versus hybrid instruction. We're hoping to get some guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on that, that we can use to consult with the Board of Health.
There were many different platforms used during remote learning this spring. Will there be some continuity about platforms used by all teachers this year if we have to go remote?
I expect that we'll be in a more streamlined approach to that. We are making a learning management system called Canvas available to teachers. We do have a number of teachers who are being trained in the use of that platform, that will be rolling that out in professional development to their colleagues over the next 6 weeks or so. We'd like to offer as much one-stop shopping when it comes to accessing curriculum and educational resources as possible. So it's not going to be perfect, but I expect that you will see a better model this fall than you saw in the spring.
There's another question about supplies, just asking for clarification that at this point in time, we are not asking families to stockpile wipes and sanitizer and things like that.
That's true. We are not.
Will we know by the 10th as parents what the plan will be?
I would suggest that you'll know on the 10th or the 11th what that plan is. DESE has spelled out some pretty specific requirements for what needs to happen for sharing the plan once it's finalized. And so while I'd love to say that it'll be ready to go to you on the 10th, it may not be ready until the 11th, but you should know in just about a week.
At this point, that is the end of the questions that have been submitted.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for their participation, for the great questions that are being asked, and to remind everyone that that this is, again, a fluid process. I want to thank the dozens of people who have been highly engaged in the work of assisting us in drafting plans and formulating ideas and doing all the work that's going to drive a great educational model for the Lee Public Schools. And so, there are too many people to name, but lots of people have been involved. If you have further questions, please send them to returntoSchool2020@leepublicschools.net, and we'll get back to you. And I'm hopeful that we have an outstanding opening of school. You're going to get some more communication from me in the coming days, weeks, and obviously months as we navigate these uncertain times. But our hearts are with ensuring that kids have access to the best education possible, that our staff and our students stay safe, and that you as families feel supported in that work. So I appreciate you taking time tonight. I want you to have a great evening, and I look forward to hearing from you if you have questions anytime soon. Thank you.